Good.
That's what I choose. Hello and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk. I'm Kirsten Howe and Madison Gunn is here with me today. You get 2 for 1 today. Yay. And the couple of different things. First of all, it's Friday that we're doing this live, and normally we do it on a Thursday morning, and here we are on Friday afternoon. So we might be a little more relaxed. I don't know what. We're ready. And the other thing, we each have animals in our who seem to take control of our offices from time to time. So you might see a cat, you might hear a dog. What's going on over there with your crew?
I promised the mailman came. I have no guarantees Amazon's not going to show up. So we'll just pray for the best.
That's always the trigger. And the other fun thing related to this, which I just now became aware of, I don't know why, but it's not uncommon at all. I live in Oakland and we have helicopters flying over the neighborhood today. So you might hear some of that too. Sorry, everybody, but so
hey, all right. I live in Antioch. That's a good chance of that as well.
Oh my gosh. It's strange times that we live in. Okay. So here we are today, and Madison and I are going to talk about a change that was enacted last year, but will become effective this year to the Medi-Cal eligibility laws. And what we're talking about is the asset restrictions. Certain Medi-Cal programs have asset restrictions, and those are going to be phased out in California. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk a little bit about the current law just to compare it so you can understand it. You can put it in context. We'll talk about the current law. We'll talk about what the new law will be like. We'll talk about who will be affected, who won't be affected, sort of what this will mean to which groups of people, whether it'll affect your planning or not. And then a few things to watch out for. And also at the end, we're going to just get on our soapboxes and talk about what we think about this change. And if you stick with us to the end, that's what you'll get. So Madison, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what the current law is?
Yeah. So under the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, or whatever you'd like to call it, there is Medicaid. Medi-Cal is the California implementation of Medicaid, and essentially it's a low income or low asset, affordable health care. Typically it's free. And it's very complicated in California. There is not just one. There's, I don't know, dozens.
Many.
Yeah. And with Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, they added more. So, we'll kind of touch on those a little bit. But I think the big question is always to make sure see what you have first before you start asking questions, which will be on that annual determination letter that you get from Medi-Cal or Social Security or however you're getting it.
Yeah, it's important to understand which Medi-Cal program is providing your benefit because the requirements vary and you need to know. And it's always interesting how often clients don't know. They go, oh, I'm on Medi-Cal. That's all they know about.
And a lot of times, like the majority of Medi-Cal recipients are on what's called MAGI Medi-Cal, which is a modified adjusted gross income Medi-Cal. Typically, it's through Covered California, and it's done based on your income only, not assets. So if you inherit something and that's the type of, Medi-Cal you're on, typically it doesn't affect anything, but it does affect if you get a raise or your spouse gets a job or something of that nature. And then the main one that we talk about a lot, and that's the majority of our practice, is what they call the aged and disabled Medi-Cal, and that's for people who are over 65 or disabled and typically need long-term skilled nursing type care. And that one has a lot more specific requirements. So that one, you're only allowed to have $2,000 in assets if you're a single individual. And if you are married, you're allowed to have $3,000 in assets, big jump. If you're looking to get in-home support care, if you're looking for skilled nursing, then that if you're married, you're allowed to have an additional 137,400 as of today, for 2022.
Right. And then starting July 1st, so just a few months from now, that asset limit for the elderly and disabled is going to bump up. It's not going to be 2,000 for the institutionalized spouse plus 137,400 for the spouse at home. It's going to be 130,000 for the person receiving Medi-Cal plus $65,000 for each additional member of the household. So a married couple would be allowed to keep now $195,000 worth of what we call non-exempt assets. Now, remember, you're always allowed to keep your home. You're always allowed to keep a car. Those are called exempt assets. You know, the furniture in your house, those kinds of things. And now, starting July 1st, you'll also be allowed to keep 130,000 or 195,000 if you're married. So that's a decent increase, not a huge increase. It's an increase from 139,400 up to 195. But it is a big increase for people who are looking to get in-home support services because the limit was much lower for that program. Okay, so that is all what's going to happen starting July 1st. We're bumping up the asset limit. We still have an asset limit, but it's higher. In California, the plan is to roll out further asset restriction releases, I guess. In other words, the plan is to eliminate all asset restrictions completely at some point after January 1st, 2024. So that's a big change. That is a big change. So our folks looking for nursing home care, you know, they can have their home, they can have their one car, they can have 2 cars, they can have 5 cars, and they can have whatever else they have and still qualify for Medi-Cal. Sort of. Right. I mean,
that's not the hardest part of getting Medi-Cal.
No. Exactly. So, okay. So Madison, so that we've just been talking about Medi-Cal, and I always like to make sure that people don't confuse Medi-Cal and Medicare. How does this, what we've just been talking about, affect Medicare?
So the good news is it doesn't affect your Medicare. And just as a recap, Medicare is what we are all entitled to once we turn 65 because we've paid into it. And it's, you know, Part A and Part B are required. You can have an Advantage plan, a prescription plan, whatever you need for your situation, you know, when you turn 65. What Medi-Cal will do, and now that it has increased eligibility, particularly for single people, or in 2 years for everybody, is that it allows you to supplement your Medi-Cal or
Right.
Medicare. Sorry, it allows Medi-Cal to supplement Medicare. So with Medicare, and I don't know, you know, like we've talked about this, I don't know if everybody knows, you know, does just because it's required and everybody has to get on it, that doesn't mean anything's free. So
Yeah, it's not free.
it's not free.
It's not
Not
free.
only
You
do
pay
you
for
pay
it.
for it, you pay a premium, but you also pay co-pays. You know, if you don't have a
Right.
prescription drug plan, or even if you do have to pay additional for a prescription drug plan, you still have a co-pay on your prescriptions. You
Right.
still have a co-pay on certain hospital stays and things like that. What Medi-Cal would do is if you qualify for both, you are what's called Medi-Medi, and essentially everything is paid for.
Yeah. So the Medi-Cal pays for the part that Medicare doesn't pay for. They
Right.
pick up the co-pays and the premiums.
Yeah.
If you qualify for
Yeah.
Medi-Cal.
Yeah. Right now, if you're on that Magi Medi-Cal we talked about or covered California and you turn 65, you would essentially be dropped from Medi-Cal and
Right.
just have Medicare, which isn't necessarily helpful depending on, your individual, finances. But
Right.
you could qualify for what's called a Medicare savings program, but those had an asset limit, and that's how you would be Medi over 65 just based on income. So that wouldn't have worked under today's law. But July
Right.
1st, that asset limit is going up exactly the same for a Medicare savings program. So,
So a person who right now is under 65 and they are getting Medi-Cal to pay for their health insurance under Magi Medi-Cal, in other words, they have low income, but maybe they have a lot of assets. As soon as they turn 65, now there's an asset requirement and they're going to lose the Medi-Cal, but they'll have Medicare, which doesn't pay for everything, whereas Medi-Cal pays for everything. So it could be a hardship to people like that. But now the asset limits are going away.
right.
Yeah. It's not going completely away for another 2.5 years, or year and a half, I guess, but it'll help.
Yeah. And so who won't this affect, Kirsten? What category of
That is an excellent
people?
question. Well, the first, obvious answer is people who are receiving Medi-Cal because they are on SSI. So, SSI is a supplemental income provided to people who have very, very low income, and are disabled. If you're disabled and you have low income, you can receive SSI, which is cash that you get every month. And if you're on SSI, you are automatically eligible for Medi-Cal. SSI has income and asset limits, and those are not going away. So the people who have their Medi-Cal because they have SSI, the fact that the asset limits go away for Medi-Cal isn't going to change their situation because they need to stay within the asset limits in order to get their SSI. And the SSI, currently the maximum benefit is 1,040, I think,
In
in
California.
California. There's a federal SSI benefit, and then the states are free to enhance it. And in California, we do enhance it, and it's 1,040. So there may be situations where, you have to weigh you actually have to do the math and figure out, is receiving SSI important enough that I'm going to keep myself below this asset limit, knowing that I could still qualify for Medi-Cal without SSI. There may be people who could qualify for Medi-Cal in another way. If they just drop the SSI, they can have more assets. So there will be people like that. And, every case is going to be different. We're going to just have to look at each case and do the math, and
Yeah.
see what makes sense.
Also.
So, okay. So, which leads, I think, to the question, are special needs trusts no longer important? I think I just answered it for some people who definitely need SSI. Madison, can you talk about other situations where, we
Yeah.
still need special needs trusts?
Yeah, that is the big change in the law is only about the asset test. There's still income limitations when it comes to Medi-Cal. All the different kinds of Medi-Cal have different income limitations, and even for the aged and disabled one, if you need long-term care, they're going to take all of your income minus your $35 a month. Big spenders that we are, and that goes towards your share of costs. So your income affects a lot of different things, and so if you're going to inherit a chunk of change from your parents or a grandparent or whomever, that money, if you inherit $500,000 or half of a house in California that's going to be rented out, that is income that could put you over the threshold for something or be counted against you as a share of cost situation. So that is a big reason to keep that income off of your social security number, so to speak, and in your trust. So that
Yeah. And we've had a number of cases recently. In fact, we kind of have a couple right now that this is a problem when someone who's going along nicely on Medi-Cal and whatever else, and they inherit money. So then we have to figure out, how do we help them to preserve the benefit that they're getting? Sometimes it's put it in a special needs trust. And that is probably true for a lot of people, especially if it's a large inheritance, because that large inheritance is going to generate too much income just by itself, and that's going to disqualify them. But this might help people who are inheriting smaller amounts of money, and that's because it's always a problem. What do you do with $70,000?
right.
Yeah,
with the asset test, that's actually helpful. You're not like, they're getting a $10,000 life insurance policy, now they have to spend it in that month in order to not lose their Medi-Cal,
right.
Or SSI.
And it might be easy to spend $10,000 in a month in order to get yourself down below that $2,000 limit, but 70, that's really pushing it. And yet, is $70,000 enough to justify setting up a special needs trust?
Right.
You're kind of stuck. And so this is going to, I think, be helpful for some of those cases that we've gotten.
Yeah. Unless everybody needs a fancy new SUV, that's outfitted for everything. That's pretty much the only way.
I want one of those Sprinter vans that's all tricked out for
camping.
Yeah. That would be, those are like $100,000, even $200,000. That's a good way to
building one out for like 80, I think. We could
you can find them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, if that's what you're into.
Yeah. Obviously, you guys could tell what we like to do.
Yeah.
Camping. Yeah. So that special needs trust is also good for a couple other reasons. One is it can be used in lieu of a conservatorship. So if your child or a disabled family member can't manage their funds, using a special needs trust to have the trustee of that trust manage the funds for them is a good way to do that. With or without court oversight, that's going to all depend on a bunch of different factors, but it's still better than having to do a conservatorship.
Right. Yeah. Some disabled people just can't, whatever the amount of money is, they're not going to be able to manage it for themselves.
Yeah.
So,
or maybe they just shouldn't.
True enough. Yeah. Can't or shouldn't, either way. Okay. So, and of course, if SSI is needed, a special needs trust is going to be very important. So other things that we need to keep in mind when we're thinking about, wow, now we can have assets and still qualify for Medi-Cal. Yes, you can, but we can't ever lose sight of the fact that there is estate recovery. So you can be eligible for Medi-Cal and receive Medi-Cal. And if you haven't done the appropriate estate plan, when you die, Medi-Cal is going to present a bill to your estate and they're going to expect you to pay it back. So we always want to have an estate plan in place that will prevent that, if that's what the client wants. If the client is happy to refund some money to the state of California, then that's fine. But you want to make that your choice. The other thing is, California could always change the eligibility rules, and I'm not sure what would happen then if they did that. They give you this right to own property, and then they change the rules. Would they have to grandfather people? I don't know. I would hope that they would. So there are a lot of question marks, things that we don't know yet. All we know is this bill has been passed. We haven't seen any of the implementation of it rolled out. We don't know what's going to happen. The other thing is, the first part of the law doesn't take effect until July. If you need Medi-Cal right now, that's not helpful to you. You still have to get down below the limit. And the second part, we don't know when that's going to take effect. It will be at least January 2024. So if you've got more than 130,000, you're still going to have to, stay below that, do the planning in order to stay below that.
Until we have an effective date.
Until we know. And then you
Yeah.
can use that date as a planning, consideration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kirsten, what do you think of this new law? What are your thoughts?
Now we get to the fun part. This is where all the listeners tune out. I have a few thoughts. I think it's good. I think that, always expanding the coverage to more and more people is a good thing. I'm not going to argue with that. What I guess what I would say is I have a different wish list. If we're going to expand Medi-Cal coverage, what I would have liked to have seen is, well, let me give you the background. I mean, it's great that more people will be eligible for Medi-Cal, especially in the realm where we generally work, which is people in skilled nursing facilities. There aren't enough beds in the skilled nursing facilities. There's not enough caregivers. The caregivers don't make enough money. They can't afford to live where they work. I would have liked to have seen somehow the state of California use some of this big excess budget they've got to solve some of those problems. We need more facilities. We need more caregivers. We need them to make more money. And the other thing, this is something that we see really a lot in our practice, is that the things that our clients are struggling with the most, dementia, a lot of that is just never covered by Medi-Cal. What people need help paying for is that sort of interim care where the person needs supervision. They really need to be in a memory care facility. They don't need to be in a skilled nursing facility because they're just not sick, but they have dementia. And that is so hard for so many of our clients. So that's what I would have liked to have seen, is somehow extend Medi-Cal to take care of that.
Yeah. Round the clock care and round the clock medical care are
two different things.
Two very different things, even though we don't look at it that way as a society necessarily. The government does.
Yeah. Right. So, and Madison, how about you? What do you want to say on your soapbox?
My big thing, and this applies to SSI as well, in the sense that it doesn't necessarily open more people up for SSI, but people who have special needs, or have special needs, particularly with mental health or behavioral concerns. And most of the times they have all that under control, but we haven't really dealt with the influx of generations that have those diagnoses going into just regular assisted living.
Yeah.
Right now, if the assisted living cannot care for you, the default is skilled nursing. If there's some issue, behavioral issue, or you're on psychotropic medication, those assisted livings can deny you residency just based on the fact that they say they can't manage your care.
Can't manage your care. Yeah, because assisted living, they're private businesses.
Right.
And they can run their business however they want. Because they don't receive Medi-Cal or Medicare.
Right.
They are not participating in that at all. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then the facilities that people who have those issues or concerns end up in, those long-term care facilities, they're usually, 90% Medi-Cal beds. And not only are there, one, not enough of them, but two, they're not the best of places. And they're not the best in terms of trying to facilitate people who have behavioral or special needs or mental health. They're not, they're not geared for that, so to speak.
Right.
And so my understanding, working with people who are placement facilitators, they the board and care seems to be the way to go with all of that. But again, they are not
That's
covered
private
by
pay.
it's private pay. There are starting to get people who are doing the assisted living
This is a little
waiver
waiver.
program for
Yeah.
skilled nursing, and they'll do it in there, but they're not really regulated as like a skilled nursing facility is. So it only works if you don't need serious medical care. So there's still just this, there's more options now and there's more popular options, but there is not a, the problem is there is no one size fits all approach for everybody that's on Medi-Cal or that's going to need skilled nurse. Even with skilled nursing, there's not a one
Yeah.
type, approach. But if we had the resources for all of that, that would be great. Where they're more trained, living wage, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just such a huge problem that there really are so many people who need assistance with what they're dealing with, and big groups of them are not covered by Medi-Cal, and they really need to be.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. Although I think, what is it, 1 in 4 Californians is on Medi-Cal,
I think so.
one of the
Yeah.
Medi-Cal programs. So it already covers a lot of people, but there are some really significant groups that just aren't really covered.
Yeah.
And someday we can wish. Okay. I'm going to go to our questions and see if anybody's actually watching on a Friday afternoon. Let's scroll to the top and make sure I don't miss any this time. Oh, no. Let's see. Okay. Oh, okay. Is this change in the law permanent?
No changes in the law are permanent.
No changes in the law.
They're permanent until they're changed again.
Until they are not. Yeah. So what happened is this was passed in connection with the 2021-2022 budget. And the legislature has budgeted, well, the legislature and the governor, that's a joint process. They have budgeted, what is it, $105 million per year to pay for this change. And, that's great. Right now we have this giant surplus. And so they're looking for ways to spend it. But, not too long ago, we had some really bad years in California. And who knows what they're going to do with this expansion if that happens again.
When did state nursing homes go away? Like the 80s with Reagan?
Yeah.
They're going to bring that back with a revamped situation. There's no billing issues if the state runs them.
That's true. Yeah. Just open the doors and come on in. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, so that, in answer to the question, is it permanent? It's budgeted indefinitely, but we pass a new budget every year and it could just be pulled out at any point, I guess. And like I said, hopefully they'll figure out a way to grandfather people who would be severely impacted if they changed it. I'm
sure they did some sort of study to see how that's projected before they just threw that in the budget.
Yeah. Well, so we'll see. Although, you can't assume that things are done thoughtfully all the time. We went through that whole Prop 19 fiasco.
Yeah.
And those people did not get grandfathered. So anyway, another question. Isn't Medi-Cal a state and federal program? Did the federal government okay this? You want to talk about it, or you want?
Sure. I mean, it is a state and federal program, but it's a federal program that federal government gives money to each state for each state to deal with it. So right. California can do what they want as long as they're not getting more money from the federal government than any other state is. I'm sure they get money allocated based on the amount of population and all of that. Yeah. So the state just is kicking in more money for this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think they did have to actually get the federal government's approval to do this expansion, but it doesn't cost the federal government anything. As Madison said, this extra is all coming out of the state budget. which is, which is great right now. This year we have a really great state budget, but that may not always be true.
You might need it to buy water. We don't know.
That's right. We're going to be buying water from Iowa, and that's going to cost us a lot of money. So stay tuned, sports fans. I think that's the last question, but I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. Oh, here we go. Okay. See, I often miss the very bottom question, and then I sign off, and I feel bad about that. When applying for Medi-Cal, it asks for total household income for the individual applying. I thought I didn't have to include my income as a spouse.
Yes, you do have to include all the income. It doesn't mean it's getting counted against you.
Right.
There is what's called, it's an MNA. Is that what it is?
MMMNA.
Yeah.
MNA.
Yeah. It's like the minimum amount that the well spouse or spouse not applying is allowed to have, which is a good thing, because let's say one spouse, is making, the well spouse brings in $1,500 a month, and the spouse applying brings in $4,000 a month. Some of that is allowed to be shifted to the well spouse, because they are required to get a minimum amount of income,
Right.
or they're allowed to get a minimum amount of income between both spouses. So you want to report everything, so that they can do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the bottom line is it's one Medi-Cal application, and they ask you for everything. They don't need everything. If you're getting this kind of Medi-Cal, yeah, they're not going to look at the spouse's income. They don't care. But if you're getting this kind of Medi-Cal, then it is important. So
yeah,
that's all.
It's one application
for it. It doesn't mean they're going to use that information. Yeah.
It's one Medi-Cal application for all the different types of Medi-Cal and CalFresh and a few other things,
right,
all rolled into one, that each county implements for the state's implementation of the federal Medicaid program. It's a trickle down effect.
It's a what do you call that? A multi-layer.
An MLM.
Yeah. No, I didn't say that. Okay. So I think that's our last question. Madison, do you have anything else you want to add? Anything you think of that we didn't cover here?
No.
Okay. So, so watch for the changes. It's happening. It's happening. We're inching closer to healthcare for everyone in California, but this isn't it yet. This isn't it yet.
It's a trial run, I think. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you all for being here. I hope you got something out of this. I know we did, just because, it's fun. But, and have a nice weekend. And we will connect with you next time.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcounsel.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcounsel.com/scheduling. Don't forget to keep an eye out for our next live episode in 2 weeks. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcounsel.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.